Well, today in our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast, we're going to go back to the book of Job. So we're going to vacillate back and forth. I'm not going to go through all the sections of Job. I've done that before. But we're going to look at the big picture. And so as you're reading through Job, you can kind of latch on to some of these big picture items, and that might help guide you through the book of Job. It's a unique book. After we get through the early chapters, the first couple of chapters, of what's going on here, and Job in chapter 3 begins to kind of unravel, it says in verse 1 of chapter 3, he cursed the day of his birth. So Job is having struggles, as you and I would be, going through things like this. So we're not too hard on Job, but he has three friends who've sat for a week and said nothing. That's good friendship, people that will actually just kind of be there for you, care for you, but not preach to you. Matter of fact, they've said nothing as far as we know at this point. But finally, they decide it's time to say something. So the three friends begin to unload. And what we have here is a lot of philosophy, a lot of thinking. Now, I want to caution you as you read Job, and we see the comments of these friends in particular. We know that the inspired scripture is giving us what they said. So this is not something that didn't happen or wasn't said. But that doesn't mean that it's always true. So what I mean by that, we have in scriptures the word of the devil, but his words were false, right? We know they were accurately recorded, but he's deceptive. Be careful with the book of Job, because we have worldviews here that are not biblical that are being expressed, and some of the things that these guys are saying is on target, but some of it is not. So don't buy into anything these guys say unless it can be verified by other scriptures. Just a caution, because I read all the time in various places people quoting from one of these different ones who, as if this is something that is found in other scriptures, and sometimes it's not. Be careful with that. But we start with Eliphaz. Eliphaz apparently is the key leader here of the friendships in chapter 4. And Eliphaz has a worldview that Job is only suffering because he's evil. And that's the only reason why people suffer. In chapter 4, verse 7, he said, whoever perish being innocent. Verse 8, according to what I've seen, those who plow iniquity are those who sow trouble harvest it. In other words, only because you're evil, that's why you're going through this, Job. It's a result of your sin. And Job, of course, is going to push back on that. His source of that is a mystical experience with some kind of spirit, he says. He says in verse 12, now word was brought to me stealthily. Verse 13, in the visions of the night. In verse 15, then a spirit passed by my face. So he's not drawing his conclusions on anything God has communicated to him, but something that he has been communicated to by some mystical experience he's had. And here's what the Spirit says, verse 17, can mankind be just before God? Well, that's kind of a letdown with all the build-up to what the Spirit is going to teach him, and he says the very obvious thing. So that's, and we continue with him for a while. Then we come to his other friend. Go over to chapter 8 for a moment and look at another friend, Bildad. Bildad has a similar view. He believes in the law of reciprocity, or as the Hindus would say, nirvana. He's getting what he deserves, or karma, let's call it that. He's getting what he deserves, and if he wasn't, again, very much like Eliphaz, you're getting what you deserve. So look at these verses, chapter 8, and he says in verse 5, if you would seek God and implore the compassion of the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, surely now he would rouse himself for you. It's all your fault, Job. You are getting what you deserve. Turn to the Lord, seek the Lord, and he will deal with all this issue for you. Go back to, and his source of understanding is past generations. Verse 8, seek the knowledge of the fathers. Tradition is his source. Now he has another friend, and that friend is Zophar. We go over to chapter 11 for him. Zophar doesn't have quite as much to say, but he believes in verse 6 that God forgets part of your iniquity. Job, you're not even getting what you deserve. Now, Zophar has figured that out somehow, that somehow he knows that Job should be punished even worse than he has been, which would be a lot in his case. In verse 14, if iniquity is in your hand, put it far away. Do not let the wickedness dwell in your tents. Then indeed you would lift up your face without moral defect, and you would be steadfast and not fear. Job, again, all of them are basically saying the same thing. They're coming from different sources of knowledge. They're coming from different angles, but they're all saying the same thing. Job, the only reason you're suffering is because of your sin. And if you turned around, sought God as you should, then God would rescue you. Well, Job is not pleased with this, and tomorrow we're going to look at Job's pushing back against the advice of his friends.